All right. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to Umoja Cypher Sessions. What I want to do is start us off with a little centering. So I'm going to ask my brother to come up here, my man, not you, sir, not you. We don't want to mess everybody up, have people running out of this thing, So we're going to ask my brother to come up and help us. And so this is a participatory moment as he comes up. So I'm going to ask my man, Ruben. No, not you, sir. No, sit down. Yeah, it ain't your turn yet. My bad. My man, Ruben, a.k.a. Namaste Thug, to come and do his thing. So come on up, Ruben.
So we're going to kind of sit up straight. And as we breathe in, I'm going to kind of start a rhythm for you, but you find your own specific rhythm that's fit for you. And my mind going to try to pull me everywhere else. It's not quiet in your mind. You want to sit still and some different thoughts come across your mind like, whoa, I'm not my mind. You want to be able to sit and watch like a movie how many different thoughts come up per day. That makes sense? Okay, y'all ready? So we're going to take a deep breath in. 3, 2, 1, 0, or breathe, hold that prana, go through our body. Then exhale. 3, 2, 1, 0. If you want to, put your left hand on your belly button, your right hand over. Just kind of feel the air going in that abdomen area. All the way out. Exhale back in. And as our stomach expands, it reminds us of Buddha. His belly is so big because he understands the problem of the world and he digests them and allows them to flow through him. Extend that belly out. Exhale. Every time we exhale, we want to feel the muscle somewhere relaxing. Give yourself permission to relax and just be.
All right. Y'all feel good? Y'all awake? Or y'all like asleep? Or you're woke? You're awake, you're asleep, or you're woke? All right. So, all right. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you. We're going to roll right into some performances. We're going to allow some amazing poetry performances to come touch the mic. So I'll call up first, please. Welcome to the microphone, Mr. Peter Lange.
It's a little call and response. So I'm gonna explain at the end, but every time I say red paint, I want y'all to say black ink. So when I say it's gonna be like this. Red paint, and then you say black ink. Red paint, black ink. Red paint, black ink. Alright, hold. So I'm gonna be like, red paint, black ink. Red paint, black ink. Red paint, black ink. Red paint, black ink, black sphinx, free think, crazy thought. I like to break pyramids and take long walks on the beach, but I can't no more. Crazy storms, sludges forms, hazmat birds, chloroform, skin break, sludge, money, death killed, money, it the dead, flies everywhere, skirt, tie, lies a part of ties, and we tie, we ain't got no time, we'll implode shit, hashtag activist, purple, take a sip, lean on the fence, and then you flip, activist, hashtag, sit purple, lean fence, flip, land the script, they shoot and don't miss, cancerous, black fist, they want my wrist, they want my neck, they held me down, and this is what I said. They want my wrist, they want my neck, they held me down, and this is what I said. Red paint, black ink, fuck 12, 13, guillotine my wrist, guillotine my wrist, guillotine my wrist, red paint, black ink, red paint, black ink, red paint, black ink. We rock supreme, you rock supremacy. Out here making trends of me. Trendy friends, they friended me when friends like me are in the streets. Dead, bullets red, apostles bled. They trying to kill the children all to death. Our obsession with oppression, forget ourselves, we want the most. We fake at civil evil vigil, then we go and mask with hope. Awaken me, I know not what is woke. I know not what is woke. Awaken my soul. Melanophobia, dark skin dystopia, get out. Harvest organ cornucopia, sunken place where they throwing us. They say it's not by race, genetically we all the same. Sunken place. For the slave and sex slaved, sunken place. For the bullet bit and robbed and ripped, we will change the day. Until that day I'm screaming, I'm red paint. I'm black lightning. I'm red paint. I'm black lightning. I'm red paint. I'm black lightning. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. One second. So I'm gonna explain that real quick. So the idea behind that is when I say I'm red paint, I'm thinking of the picket signs and the fences and protests. And when I say I'm black ink, I mean that's a litigious side of like writing new policies and being aware and taking action on the legal side of things. So when I wrote this, I was thinking of both sides of actually being in the streets, but then also writing to change the laws and change the policies so we have a more wholesome action. But thank you for being a part of that. Thank you.
Pharaoh, let my people go. Oh, Pharaoh, let my people go. Oh, Pharaoh, let my people go. Oh, Pharaoh, Pharaoh, when were you gonna let us know that you never intended to let us go? Pharaoh, when were you gonna let us know that once freed, we'd then once again be locked up by cop spotting dreadlocks and learn to call cell blocks home? Pharaoh, when were you gonna let us know? Were you ever going to let us know? Or were you just hoping we wouldn't figure it out on our own? Well, Pharaoh, we did. We've seen the writing on the walls, hidden in hieroglyphs, depictions of perfect peace between the people preaching fantasies of beings being equal. Pharaoh, you ain't slick. We see what you've done. Let Moses play POTUS in the palace for a few years while you instill fear in our sons on the run, balled up in baskets, weighed in water in order to escape the heat, escape mistreatment. We've seen it, your civil servant staff turn to serpents, just following orders, just following you, swallowing youth, ending lies before our very iPhones feed us forbidden fruits to view the naked truth. Pharaoh, the snake is you. Planted seeds of deceit beaten into the people's minds till they're battered and bruised, till they're black and blue, till their eyes view blacks and blues bleed on streets while each side's families weep and wounds cut deep. Pharaoh, you gotta see, there's danger in this game that you play. You can't keep killing sons because when stars die, they tend to take solar systems with them. Pharaoh, you're risking your kingdom. Listen, this is not a threat. This is simply advice. Let my people go before my people stop asking, because I assure you the last thing that you want is exodus by force.
What's up, y'all? Everyone feeling all right? Awesome. Another black boy dies, and Becky ain't say shit. Typically, Becky ain't even predicted to say shit. Becky be predictable. Only rallies for causes that really resonate with her, which mean only rallies for causes where they include American flags, nonviolent police, and racial slurs. Becky be captain of the cheerleading squad. Pink toes and upturned nose. Becky likes to hang around deep side by where them bikers like to ride. Parts of town she ain't got no reason being at, but Becky is dating Brian. Brian, 6'10", captain of the football team. Brian, all heart, all muscle, that boy got a future ahead of him. Brian works at the 7-Eleven by Deep Side, spends all his time counting paper and moving boxes, works so hard his spirit blue and soles of his shoe black. Brian is black and Brian is dating Becky, and another black boy dies. And Becky ain't say shit. And Billy ain't say shit, but Billy knows how to say nigga, and every rap song knows how to hit follow on every Instagram and every Twitter that has anything to do with hype beast or hip hop shit. Billy runs 3 accounts himself. Billy, who used to ball in high school, pronounces idol as Jordan and preference as fetish. Billy, who calls black women gorgeous and views dating them as contributing to the civil rights era. And another black boy dies. and Billy ain't say shit. And I wonder if they really don't get the joke, can't see the irony behind going so hard for our culture until stuff gets real, drinking our honey and watching as this plant gets killed, how selfish it is to only be on our side when we winning, only be on our team when it's behind closed doors. Our black deserves to be loved out loud, protected out loud, supported out loud. So keep your black little boyfriend, keep your Air Force Ones, but if you're not with us through the stuff that actually counts and you're not with us at all, your silence does nothing more than reiterate a point proven the moment my ancestors were dragged off that boat. Who do you think stood there quiet and let them? Another black boy dies, and Becky ain't say shit, but that's all right. We don't need no Becky. We don't need them, never have and never will.
Can you all hear me? So first off, I just want to say, can we give another round of applause for the wonderful poets that just bless us. You all are a gift to the universe in a very real way. As young folk, you could have chosen to do anything, but you chose to utilize your gifts in this particular way. I want to also thank Brother Darius and acknowledge the good work that he's doing and how important this man is to our community, not only as a poet, but bringing youth and young voices together. I want to acknowledge also Brother Emmanuel George and his importance for archiving our history. I believe that the reason why it's so important for us to affirm is because there is no guarantee that a black man is going to have life, first and foremost. The second thing is there's no guarantee that a black man would choose to do with his life what those two brothers are doing. And the same thing is with what these young folk are doing, which is amazing. I just want to share some thoughts, and then it's a dialogue and a conversation that we can have. So it's so interesting, right? There was a mentioning of a scripture, right? Wherever there are two or three are gathered, there I am in the midst. But there's also another scripture that is rarely ever mentioned. I think it's because it makes people uncomfortable. That's Psalms 82, verse 6, which says, "Ye are gods." Says it in the Bible. Ye are gods. I have a 4-year-old son, beautiful black boy if I say so myself, right? And the thought is that he is a different person than me, that we are two separate entities, but separation is an illusion. He and I share the same last name, and so there is connectivity there. And so wherever he is, I am, and wherever I am, he is. He is literally made in my image. He looks just like his daddy, I like to think, right? But what we realize is that Europeans made God in their own image rather than recognizing they were made in the image of God. Did you catch that, right? And so the reality is that the thing that Europeans have designed themselves to do is to disconnect African people from their godness. If I can convince you that you are not divine, if I can convince you that who is God really looks like me, therefore you are convinced that I am God. And if I am God and you are its opposite, then what does it make you? And so I want to take you through a particular scenario. I want you to imagine for a moment. Somewhere, hundreds of years ago, there is a plantation. An individual figures out to buy a piece of land. He therefore buys a slave, utilizes that slave to be able to generate revenue after revenue after revenue, and then he takes that revenue and buys another slave. And then he buys another slave. And this man eventually has a child. And so he therefore takes this land that is now grown, he takes the slaves that have now grown, the revenue has now grown, and on his deathbed he says to his child, "I gift all of these things to you." The child takes this on, the land and the slaves, rinse and repeat, takes the revenue, buys more slaves, buys more land, more slaves and more land and more slaves and more land. On his deathbed, he therefore gifts his child and says, "I leave all of this to you, more land and more slaves and more land and more slaves." And eventually, one of the children decides to not only have a child with his wife, but also have a child with his slave. So now, one day, these two boys find themselves looking at each other. One of them being the child of the slave and the wife, the other being, or slave master and the wife, the other being the child of the slave master and a slave. And the question is, and I'm going to ask you this, what is the child that is the child of the slave master and the wife gifted with? What does he have? Y'all done missed, y'all, okay, let me, one more time. For generations, someone takes land, gives it to the child and the slaves. That child takes the land, expounds on that, and more slaves. Dies, gives it to the child. That child takes the land, gives it more slaves, gives it to the child. But that child decides, I'm going to have a child with my wife and my slave, meaning that he has two children. One of them is the child from his wife, the other is a child from his slave. Now, the one that is a child of the wife, what is he going to be gifted with when his father dies? Land and the slaves. The child of the slave woman, though they have the same father, what is he going to be gifted with? Slavery. So now I want you to think about this, right? It's a continuation. And so hundreds of years later, this is rinse and repeat. 1865 comes, Jim Crow comes, but it's still rinse and repeat. And then eventually you get to a particular place where we find ourselves in Fort Lauderdale. And this particular area right here was one in which was frequented and owned by black people. Well, not necessarily owned by black people, because how can you own if you've been owned? How can you own if you've been owned? How can you be God if you're convinced you're redeeming? And so when you're not owning yourself, it is easy to be owned. And if it's easy to be owned, then it's easy for someone else to come into your space. And they call that the gentry, hence the term gentrification. And so it's rinse and repeat. What happens when you're literally gifted for hundreds of years, land and humans who are seen as property, and all of a sudden that expands wealth, right? So someone said this, that this idea of racial wealth gap is a lie. She says because white folk have been getting land for free, right? So one of the things I want to share with you all and what we're going to discuss today is this. I believe that it is important that a new civil rights movement, if you will, be black economic empowerment. Too often, we end up leaving our lives in this space and our children have nothing. Tomorrow is Mother's Day. I'm gonna give my wife some money, got to. Gonna give my mother some money, got to. But there's also going to be a check that they're going to receive from my son. And you're probably like, but your son is 4. Exactly, but there's a checkbook with his name on it, literally. Have you ever heard of an UTMA before? A universal transfer account. It's one of the things. How many of you have children? Okay. I want you to think about getting an UTMA immediately. What does that look like? So quite often you and I think about, well, how do we build wealth for ourselves? But we really don't think about how do we build wealth for our children. And one of the things I want you to also know is this, that there are studies that show that wealth is not transferred when it comes to us as a people. So even when we generate some wealth and we think, oh, our children are going to be good, eventually our children are not going to be good. In part because we don't build the tools. In other words, the greatest aspect of wealth or asset of wealth is knowledge in and of itself. So my son and I, right, he's 4 years old, but he reads on a pretty high level. He goes to an all-black school, New Akabulan, right, which is essentially known as Africa before it was known as Africa. Again, they try to own our history. And so one of the things that he's already reading, literally at 4 years old, is a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. My baby's reading this book out loud at 4 years old, right? At night, we read a series from a black-owned company called Little Owners. And it goes over like, you know, Carter, the car deal owner, right? The idea is that we're trying to infuse children, our children, with ownership. That is the mindset of this particular company, right? But I got my son an UPMA account. What that means is it's an investment account for my 4-year-old where I'm already investing stocks for him so that by the time he is my age, he will literally be a millionaire by what we've been investing already. Are you with me so far? See, this is the shit they don't tell us. So what happens is when we die, we leave nothing. Go back to the plantation. Land and people and revenue, and land and people and revenue, and land and people and revenue. And what ends up happening is we've been gifting our children slavery. The problem is we've been slaves even beyond 1865. What happens when ignorance becomes an heirloom? What happens when you don't know yourself becomes an heirloom? What happens when you pass that down to your children? So now with this UPMA account where he has literally investing stocks in the Vanguard funds. So tomorrow when they open their card from their son and their grandson, there will be a check with $4 because he's 4 years old, but that check has his name on it. Mom, grandmother, I am gifting you money already because this check has my name on it. So now here's my question to you, and now the dialogue can begin, right? My question to you is number one, how do we make sure as a people that we start recognizing the importance of money? Not because money in and of itself is going to save us, because it's not. Let me rephrase that. When are we going to start, or what would it take for us to really start to understand the importance of financial literacy? That's a better way of putting it, right? So let's start there, right? Do you ever have conversations around money? And if so, what kinds of conversations do you all have?
So now we just want to open up the floor so like we all can collectively be creative together, right? So this workshop that we're going to be doing right now is in line with a lot of what we've been talking about, but also I want you all to be open to whatever comes to your mind, right? Whatever you want to create, like in this guided creation in this moment, do that, right? That's okay. So.
Doing everything to take it back. In plain sight, no hidden agenda needed with the stroke of a pen in the game so many die for are received. The virus is fresh. This bitch told me she was the key under the mat. Now I got my ass out and the cop put a gun to my back. Maybe I shouldn't have come through the window, but my ass smells though. Stinking after 3 back-to-back shifts to try to get this rent and this eviction. At least, I got some nice bubble back. She got nice bubble back in there.
I'll give you the headline. Justice isn't about just us, but it seems that just us are fighting for it. All aboard the train of freedom. All aboard the train of freedom, are we free to dominate while they still assume we are free and dumb? That's what we show, right? I can't believe that you think it's okay to sing sitting on the corner without an audience. Are you looking for pay, coins, or your big break? Child, please.
Sometimes we have to leave our villages to master skills to bring back to be appreciated by those that overlook this issue. Gentrification, coming to a black community near you. Build trust with your people, talk to your neighbors, find these stories, record them, file them, go through the elders' photo books with them. Scan these photos, organize, organize, organize. We always say we have to control our narrative, but what better way to document for perpetuity?
Like sin covered his body like a pool of dirt. He had been baptized in despair and saw his house as an answer to his prayer, saw a bath as a hug. Saw soap as quiet when he was singing hosannas. He just wanted to feel whole again. Wanted his spirit to be fresh, he wanted to be seen, rather than looked past, wanted to be loved. Some days he wondered if he was hated because of his blackness or his stench. Some days he wondered if blackness had a stench. Did it smell like